The Tuesday, December 6th, 2022 meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to read a brief announcement about Open Podium, which we offer to our residents. It's an opportunity for Eden Prairie residents to address the City Council on issues related to Eden Prairie City government prior to each council meeting. Council meetings typically occur the first and third Tuesday of each month. These open podiums occur from 6:30 to 6:55 p.m. here in the council chamber. If you wish to speak at Open Podium, please do contact the City Manager's office at 952-949-8412 by noon of the meeting date with your name, your phone number, and subject matter to help us be better prepared for you. Open Podium is not recorded or televised. If you have questions about Open Podium, please do contact the City Manager's office. Here in the city of Eden Prairie, the Housing and Redevelopment Authority is actually the City Council. Some cities actually appoint separate entities to handle the HRA issues, but here in our city, the City Council serves also as the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. So we're going to have a meeting within a meeting. So I call the HRA meeting to order, and the first order of business is to approve the minutes of our last HRA meeting, which was held back on September 6th, 2022. So is there a motion to approve the HRA minutes? And if there's any concerns or questions, we can handle that after the motion is made and seconded. So is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the HRA minutes from September 6, 2022.
Is there a second? Are there any items or anything that you wish to question about the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed. All right, Mr. Getchell, we have a couple orders of business here in this HRA meeting.
We do, Mayor, thank you. So the last meeting that the HRA held on September 6th was to approve a preliminary budget and tax levy for the HRA, and that's the item that you have before you now. As we talked about in September, the entire use of the HRA budget and levy is for city staff time that's devoted to housing projects, housing improvements, city housing programs. So we have a certain amount of staff that dedicate their time to housing issues, and that's what we relate to our budget and levy. So the action would be to now certify that budget and levy for 2023 at $205,000. And then as you know, later on in the meeting, you will be presented with the entire city budget for 23. But this is simply that amount that's the HRA budget and levy.
And some cities do place quite a bit of money into their HRA budget to use for affordable housing, et cetera. And we've chosen to fund those elsewhere, but we do use these funds for staff. And this is not, my knowledge has not gone up for 20 some years. This might be the first time it's going up quite small incrementally, 2.5%, but.
Yes, Mayor, $5,000. So right. Kind of adjusting with staff wages and benefits. It had been $200,000 for a number of years and right. Only recently went to 2005. And yes, the next item that's coming up is related to city expenditure of funds for affordable housing. That's exactly at our tax increment financing program. That's right.
Council, any questions? If not, is there a motion to certify the 2023 HRA budget?
Move to adopt a resolution certifying the 2023 HRA property tax levy to be $2,005. $205,000.
You got it.
Approving the 2023 HRA budget of $205,000 as reviewed by the council.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Getchell, the next item.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a resolution modifying one of our tax increment financing districts, District number 14, which is a housing district for the Eden Vale Townhomes, now known as the Purgatory Creek Townhomes. So it's a 32-unit affordable townhome complex that was, I'm assuming, constructed around 1997. And as with some of our other TIF districts and housing plans, when a budget is developed, when the initial district is formed, many times we need to come back and adjust that budget within the district and allow for adjusting increments so we could still provide for affordable housing for whether it be that project itself or excess increment that we can actually use outside of the district for other housing projects. So with the help of our city attorney, community development staff, our financial advisor that's here this evening as well, we're asking you to modify the budget within that district, and that will actually free up approximately $500,000 to be used on affordable housing preservation or development without having to decertify the district or make changes.
And just to be clear, tax increment financing are funds, dollars, that are taken out of potential development that had the development never occurred, those monies never would have been available.
Yeah, Mayor, so our argument is that in these districts, you're taking tax dollars within that project itself and putting it back into the project to provide affordable units that couldn't have been provided anyway.
Got it. Council, any comments or questions? If not, is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll move to adopt a resolution modifying the tax increment financing plan for tax increment financing district number 14 within redevelopment project number 5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to adjourn the HRA meeting that is within the city council meeting?
I'll move to adjourn the HRA meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving back into the council meeting, we have, I didn't count them here, but several, well, we have a really cool presentation, which I'm excited about, and several donations that I'm equally as excited about as well. So John Anderson, while you're coming up, if I, please come forward to the mic, but if I can just say a word that many of us up here on this council had as campaign goals back in several campaigns in the last 5, 6, 7 years in our to forward initiatives within our climate action plan. And one of them was to begin the process of converting all of our fleet vehicles over to electric. And we became, in my understanding, the first city in the state of Minnesota to actually set as a goal 2030 that we would have our entire electric fleet. And realizing that today there aren't, to my knowledge, electric dump trucks. Maybe there are, but we didn't have them at the time we set this goal. But thinking that by 2030 we would have the technology, and I think we're realizing that. And so now we have as a goal that every time we purchase 6, 7, 8 vehicles every year, replacement for other vehicles, we first try to go out and buy electric. So I'm excited about this. I'm super excited that we're getting acknowledged for it. So John, you go ahead and read what the award that we are getting, and I'll come down and thank you, and you can thank me, or however we want to do that. But thanks, John.
Great.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, hello, my name is John Anderson, and I'm the local government program manager with Conservation Minnesota. We're a statewide nonpartisan nonprofit that works on a variety of conservation issues. And I'm just here today to recognize the work that local governments like Eden Prairie do to protect our great outdoors. To help acknowledge that kind of work, back in the fall of 2022, Conservation Minnesota launched the Blazing Star Award, which is named after a plant native to U.S. prairies that has characteristics that we celebrate. So it's, it's hardy, it's adaptable, and it's environmentally friendly. And accordingly, the award acknowledges local governments that engage in exciting new projects that advance conservation, climate, and the environment. So the city of Eden Prairie is leading the way on our state's transition from internal combustion powered vehicles to electric vehicles. And like the mayor said, back in 2021, Eden Prairie tested the use of a new electric vehicle in the police department. And yeah, we think it is the first the first battery-powered police car used on patrol duties in Minnesota. So accordingly, we feel that Eden Prairie's groundbreaking use of electric vehicles highlights the way that cities and counties can leverage the resources they possess to have a major impact on conservation here in Minnesota. And I am happy to name the city of Eden Prairie one of the 3 winners of this year's Blazing Star Award, and hereby give this plaque in acknowledgement of that. So thanks so much.
Present that right to you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Staff. Council can set policy and direct, but it really takes our amazing staff to go out and implement our hopes and our dreams and policies and procedures. So thank you, staff. I also want to add that it is my understanding that we're the first police department in the state of Minnesota to pilot an electric vehicle, Tesla, but as many of you know, Ford Mustang is, the new Mustang is some Mustang, people that love Mustangs are a little bit frustrated. It's more like an SUV, but the new Mustang is an SUV. And they actually plan to have police cars converted out of that Mustang SUV. And we have one on order, right? And so I just checked with the chief, and I guess some parts are back ordered or something. But we're going to have these 2 cars that will be able to test against each other and really, again, be in the forefront of being a city that can maybe make some decisions that can have some national impact on, which one's preferable and which one has advantages, et cetera. So really excited about that. We'll have our second electric police car online, we hope, fairly soon.
So is the council member is the one testing these cars?
I don't think they'll let you near it, actually. I think the police officers that I've talked to love, is that true? Love the Tesla. It's very fast. So anyone speeding out there, just know that. The new Tesla police car is very fast. I believe the Mustang will be similarly fast. All right. Also, thank you, John. John and I have been connected. I don't know, I think we've met 3, 4, 5 times over the last however many years you've been in there and I've been in there, but been a great partner to work with, the Minnesota Conservation, or Conservation Minnesota. So I don't even know what you call yourselves, group? Yeah, conservation. Sounds good. Okay. Mr. Getcho, donations.
Yes, Mayor, I count at least 6, I believe, that Mr. Lotthammer will go through individually.
Mr. Lotthammer.
Your Honor, council members, these are all related to the senior center. And as you know, our staff works really hard to try to have relationships and partnerships with local businesses and organizations. And every one that you'll hear about here tonight is one that you've heard about in the past. And so we are really fortunate to have companies and organizations that continue to come forward every year with funding, which helps make it more affordable for all of our residents, but in this case, especially our senior community, for the many events that I'll also be mentioning throughout this presentation. But the first one is from Southwest Transit. It's $250, and that goes to our Senior Center Golf Classic that will happen this coming August 2023.
Great. Right before I take a vote, I'll just say this one time up front, and it'll cover for all 6 donations. But we have donations that come in typically at almost every meeting, and whether they're small or large, we just really deeply appreciate them because they help our tax dollars go further. And so I believe I added up quickly about $1,850 or something tonight that we're accepting, and it's just wonderful. So we deeply appreciate our partners. All right. With that, is there a motion to accept this donation?
Move to adopt a resolution accepting the contribution in the amount of $250 for the 2023 Senior Center Golf Classic event.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed. All right, Mr. Lotthammer.
Yes, this item is for Elam Shores making a contribution of $500, and that is towards the shred truck, the July barbecue, August golf classic, October bingo, for the total amount of $500.
You know, I have to say one more thing. The senior center does a lot of different fun activities. I mean, just the fact that the donation is going to 4 different events that all sound pretty enjoyable. So kudos to our senior center staff as well. Is there a motion to accept this donation?
I'll move to adopt the resolution accepting the contribution in the amount of $500 for the 2023 Senior Center events of May Shred Truck, $200, July Barbecue, $125, August Golf Classic, $125, and October Bingo, $50 from Elam Shores.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Lothammer.
Yes, this is a contribution of $400, and it is from Prairie Bluffs Prairie Bluffs Senior Living. It is for bingo, Valentine's breakfast, summer barbecue. Those are the events that they will be sponsoring.
Great. Is there a motion to accept this contribution?
I'll move to adopt a resolution accepting the contribution in the amount of $400 for the 2023 Senior Center events of February bingo, $50, Valentine's breakfast, $150, and summer barbecue, $200 from the Prairie Bluffs Senior Living.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right, Mr. Lothammer.
Flagstone Senior Living is contributing $250, and that's also going towards bingo and the shred truck.
Council, is there a motion?
I'll
Move
move.
to ado-
Go ahead.
Move to adopt the resolution accepting the contribution in the amount of $250 for the 2023 Senior Center event of April Bingo, $50, and Mary Shred Truck, $200 from Flagstone Senior Living.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Mr. Lothammer, just before you do the last one, just a thought here that we have talked about expanding out our bring the council out to the community, particularly our seniors in the community. And this last year, we did a council outreach at 2 different places where seniors live full-time. And I'm just looking at this list thinking, we're looking at maybe expanding that to 3 or 4 because it was really enjoyable and you have an instant audience, you know, several hundred people that happen to live in the building. So it'd be great to think of Elam Shores, Prairie Bluffs, Flagstone. We were at Flagstone actually, but at any rate, just to keep in mind the list of where we might want to take our council on the road. Mr. Lothammer.
This is the last contribution for the night. It's from Homestead. It's for $450, and it's towards the bingo event, shred truck, and golf classic, and also the Veterans Breakfast. And I would welcome the council, any of these events, even individually, to attend. A lot of them have food, and we become servers or putting ice cream on the sides of the cake or sometimes bussing the dishes. It's a really great way to interact individually, too, with the seniors. We get a lot from these organizations, not just the dollars, but they send over people to be a part of helping with the event, too. So always welcome for that.
Before Councilmember Freiberg makes the motion, since you were next in line on that one, Mr. Getchell, would it be possible on a regular basis just to shoot out an email to the council on reminders of certain of these activities, or just get them on our calendar as options? I realize with posting we'd have to be careful, but at least to have the knowledge of them on our calendars. I know we should be taking responsibility to be checking on the weekly newsletter that you send out, but anyway, sometimes we need reminders, and that would be great, because I'm sure a lot of us at different times would like to be able to attend and maybe let you know in case 3 of us, in case that begins to be an issue if too many of us show up. Okay, Councilmember Freiberg, motion.
I move to adopt the resolution accepting the contribution in the amount of $450 for the 2023 Senior Center events of January Bingo, $50, May Shred Truck, $200, August Golf Classic, $100, and the November Veterans Breakfast, $100 from Home Instead.
Second that.
Great. Beat me to it. That's wonderful. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed. All right. We really are deeply appreciative, as I'm sure the seniors are, for all of these donations. So thank you. All right, moving on to the agenda. Are there any items that any council members wish to add to the agenda, probably under council member reports? If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right, moving on to minutes. Any questions you have about any, or editing suggestions on either minutes from the workshop held back on November 15th or the council meeting? If not, if I could have a motion that would approve both of the meeting minutes at the same time.
Move to approve the following city council minutes. Council workshop held Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. City council meeting held Tuesday, November 15th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right. Consent calendars, fairly long one, A to N. Any items on the consent calendar that you want to ask some questions about, possibly even pull them off the consent calendar to have further individual discussion on? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar items A to N?
I'll move approval of items A through N on the consent calendar.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. All right. We are moving now into the first of, I can't turn the page, is it 4 or 5? 5, I think.
5, you're right, Mayor, sorry.
Public hearings. And so, Mr. Getchell.
Yes, Mayor, real quick, I want to mention this too, in case anybody was watching or came here. There's actually a time when there would have been 6 public hearings. We had a development application for some improvements to the Dairy Queen in Eden Prairie. And that's coming at the next meeting, but there was a notice mailed out, but there'll be a new notice mailed out for a new public hearing for Dairy Queen. But in case someone had received the notice and was watching or came here for it, you don't see the Dairy Queen project on this agenda. That'll be on the next council meeting for the city council. The other public hearings that we have are, except for the last one, we all do at the last meeting of the year. They're all related to our budgets and our fees and our levy and our capital improvement program. The first public hearing is a first and second reading of an ordinance for all of our fees that the city approves by ordinance. And again, assuming that there's unanimous approval, then these fees would go into place beginning next year. And these are all in the packet. It's pretty lengthy that we cover each and every fee that we have. But the fees by ordinance are typically those related to development and building. So those are building permit fees, development fees, land use application fees, site plan review fees, engineering fees, plat fees, along those lines that are codified in our ordinance, shoreland management, those types of applications. So we have all those fees proposed for next year that most are, unless they were specifically evaluated to not be in keeping with covering our costs or with many of what our peers are charging, we have, in this year, probably even lower than the rate of inflation, 2 to 3% adjustments that we might make to some of these fees. A lot of the building fees, we actually only update every 2 years. Sometimes we might do 6% every 2 years instead of 3% every year. But you are asked to hold a public hearing on these fees by ordinance, and then adopt the ordinance for the fees.
Mr. Gatcho, just a question. I'm looking at the first grouping of the building permits by valuation, and you mentioned that we check with our neighbors and just kind of a market analysis to make sure we're in the ballpark. But sometimes our sister, brother cities go through this process and then do slight changes. Do we go back, like in 3, 4, 5 months, just to kind of check back? Did we land, competitively where others are, and then giving us that opportunity next year to adjust? I mean, do we know if somebody asks, like, if you build a $500,000 house and you pay $4,667 to the city as a permit fee, do we know that that's competitive if you built the $500,000 house in St. Louis Park or you build it in Chanhassen, that kind of thing?
We do, Mayor. There are different organizations we belong to that provide that data across all cities, and exactly, we will look at that and see that maybe we're not competitive or we should make an adjustment we do the following year. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, council, this is going to be a public hearing, so I can open it up and then close that first, or do you have any questions right out of the gate here that you want to ask right at this point? All right, let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. So this is a public hearing on approving the first and second readings of the ordinance updating the fee schedule. So is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on this item? Okay, seeing none. Again, council, let's make the motion and second it, close the public hearing, and then if you still do have a question, we can take it at that time. Otherwise, we can vote.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Oh, go.
And,
I would say make the whole. Is
Okay.
that make the whole entire motion? If that's okay with you.
and approve first and second readings of the ordinance updating the fee schedule for administration of official controls and adopt resolution approving the summary for publication.
Is there a second? Second. So just a logistical question in case this comes up again on some of the other public hearings to our attorney. So we have 4 people here tonight. Typically, we need 4 out of the 5. So when there's only 4, do we need 4 out of the 4?
Yes.
In order to not just, we can pass it with 3, but in order to have the first and second reading all in the same night.
Correct.
Because otherwise we would have to wait on the second reading until the next meeting. Got it. So, council, we would need everyone's vote. It's fine if you don't want to vote for something, just to let you know that. So, council, any further discussion on this?
So I have a clarification question to Mr. Getchell. So all the fees, when we calculate, we are between 2 to 3% increase?
It really
The range we're talking about?
it depends. I mean, there are some when we get into the next item that are not the ordinance fees, that those are different. But in these sets of fees, I'd say yes.
Around there.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's kind of below the inflation rate, I would say?
Yeah, it has been. Yeah.
Any further questions or discussion? So we did take the motion and we seconded. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right, Mr. Getchell, moving on to the adopt the fee resolution for city services.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. These are fees by resolution, not by ordinance. Simple majority of council to approve a resolution for our fees. Doesn't require a public hearing, but past practice is to have a public hearing on all of our fees citywide. And these are, again, those fees by resolution are community center, membership fees, our utility fees, water, sewer, storm sewer, all of our license fees that we have, all the various licenses. So those are examples of many of the fees. It could be down to how much we would charge for a park program or to make a copy at City Center. And as I said earlier, you're going to see, depending on the business area, those adjustments might vary. I think the community center, for example, I think we had frozen fees during COVID for a few years. And after some analysis, I think you'll see some areas where those fees are going up closer to that inflation rate, to 10%. But you're also seeing within the community center, the ice rental fees and the swimming pool rental fees, swimming lesson fees are, maybe in the 2% range. So I think our managers and supervisors kind of evaluated these across all the service areas and what they're seeing with other communities as well. So you're going to see those vary quite a bit depending on the program that we're offering, the cost we need to recover. But then again, you'll see also on the licensing fees, those are staying in that 3% range as well, and we're comfortable with those rates.
So this list feels a little bit more of an art than a science in that, take the community center, for example. If we want to offer to our community an amenity of having the opportunity for a community center, we want the rates to be reasonable enough that our entire community could participate. At the same time, there are people in our community that don't use the community center, and so then it gets back to the concept of user fees. Let people that use our amenities and facilities, in a sense, pay. So then it gets back to how much and where's that magic line. And then I'm sure, Mr. Getchell, there's the comparability to other communities as well, and yet everybody's community center is a little bit different, and some are newer, and some have different amenities. So again, a little bit fuzzier, but there's still a lot of, it sounds like a lot of effort and work that this is not arbitrary. We just don't pick numbers out of the air. Our staff has done a lot of good work trying to get at the right number. Do we ever find, again, 6 months down the road, we missed it, we got too high? I guess if we get too low, we'll live with it, but do you ever get to the point that, you know, you do get enough complaints back, or you see the usage begin to drop, and we just feel like we got the number too high?
I think you're right. That's exactly it. That's why you see the variance amongst the fees. Supply and demand, or concerns or issues, or what our peers are doing. So again, I don't want to get too much into the details, but you're seeing like renting space for a birthday party is pretty flat, but the studio at our art center is seeing a pretty big increase, and I think that's due to demand or possibly needing to raise some
Recoup
revenue
costs or something.
So we will do that analysis and adjust at this time of the year.
Council, before we open it up to the public for a public hearing, any comments or questions, or should I open it up? So this is a public hearing. Anybody wishing to address the council on this particular item, please come forward. Seeing none, council, why don't you go ahead and close the public hearing, make the motion, and second, and if we have any further discussion, I'll give you that opportunity.
Move to close the public hearing and adopt the 2023 free resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Council, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose. Mr. Getchell, certifying the 2023 property tax levy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So these next two items have a presentation component prior to the public hearing. So as we've done typically at this meeting, the finance manager, Tammy Wilson, and I partner on a presentation to take you through the entire budget and tax levy proposal prior to opening the public hearing. So if that's okay, I'd like to turn things over to Tammy to get started, and then I will meet her over there.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tammy. Thanks for all the work that your finance team has put into this over the last 2 years, since we're on a 2-year budgeting cycle, but go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor and members of the council, for allowing me to present tonight. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to solicit input on the budget and property tax. And it is required by state law to be held after property owners have received their property tax statements. And those, I believe, were mailed out the week of the 21st of November. And then other entities that will be holding meetings are the county, and they held theirs on November 29th, and the school district will be holding theirs on December 12th. And so for our budget, we do prepare a 2-year budget, and this is the second year of the budget. And so the budget that we're showing now was brought forward last year, and is also the budget that was presented in September. Even though we do prepare a 2-year budget, we are required to bring forward the budget every year to ask for approval. And so for 2023, we are proposing a budget of $57.3 million, which is a $1.7 million or 3.2% increase, which includes the general fund, the debt, and the capital fund. So for general fund revenues, we're proposing a budget of $53.3 million, which is a decrease of $1.5 million or 2.8%. So for taxes, the increase is about 1.7 million or a 4.5% increase. And I'll get into further detail later in the presentation on that. For licenses and permits, we are keeping this line item relatively flat. And as was mentioned earlier when we were talking about the fees and ordinances, this is the second year, so we kept the fees flat. And then last year we did increase the fees and this revenue line item by about 6%. Intergovernmental revenue is decreasing by $3.7 million, and that is due to the American Rescue Plan federal money that we had received. And that was money that we received in 2021 and 2022 of approximately $3.7 million each year. Charges for services are increasing about $350,000, and that is due just to kind of the rebounding of the community center, just getting back to kind of more of the pre-pandemic levels. And then other revenue is increasing about $20,000. So this slide just kind of shows a breakdown of the general fund revenues. As you can see, taxes make up about 77% of the revenue budget. Charges for services, which comprise mainly like park and rec activity fees. And then licenses and permits is about 8%, and that is comprised mainly of building permit fees, liquor licenses, cable revenue, and then just some other miscellaneous revenues that we have. And then intergovernmental revenue is about 3% of the budget, and that is made up of the police and fire aid, and then also the school liaison revenue that we receive from the school district for a police officer in the school. And then the other revenue is comprised of about 2% of the budget, and that is made up of fines, investment income, and then just some other miscellaneous revenues. So for the general fund expenditure budget, we are proposing a budget of $54.4 million, which is an increase of approximately $1.7 million or a 3.4% increase. And then also the revenues, less expenditures are about 1.1 million short, and that is due to us using that ARPA money that we received from the federal government to kind of fill in that shortfall of the revenue versus the expenditures. So as you can see, the city is very service-oriented, and wages and benefits make up approximately 63% of our budget. And then user charges, which entail facilities, information technology, and fleet services, make up another about 21% of the budget. And then the other 16% is made up of like electricity, other contracted services, and other revenue or expenditure line items. So earlier I had said the expenditures were increasing $1.7 million. And as you can see on this slide, the majority of the increase is in wages and benefits, which is about $1.3 million. And then user fees makes up about $300,000 of the increase, and then electricity and other expenses are about another $100,000. So of that wages and benefits, some of the larger line items are full-time wages. And so for 2023, we are seeing a 5.8% increase. in the budget, and that does include an additional police officer. It also includes a fire administrative assistant position moving from part-time to full-time. It also includes a 3% cost of living and step and performance increases. Also during the year, we did have a compensation wage study done. Another larger line item of the budget is health insurance, which makes up about 2.6 million. But for the year, we are seeing a 1% decrease in the budget. And state law requires the city that every 5 years we have to go out for an RFP for insurance. And 2022 was the last year of that 5-year period. And so this year we were able to lock in a contract with Health Partners for 3 years. And so for 2023, our premium rates on average between the plans is going down about 8%. And then for 24 and 25, we were able to lock in a cap with an increase in the premium rates no higher than 9%. Another larger line item of the wages and benefits is workers' compensation. And we are seeing a 17% budget increase in that line item this year. For the past couple of years, we have seen double-digit increases in this line item. And most cities around the area are seeing these increased costs, and is due mainly to the public safety environment. So based off of the budget that we are proposing, the property tax levy for 2023 would be $42 million, which is an increase of about $1.8 million or a 4.5% increase. You can see the general fund, the levy is increasing pretty much the $1.8 million, and we were able to keep the capital and the debt levy flat from prior year. And then we are seeing a little bit of a decrease in the fiscal disparities contribution that we get back to the city. So for the debt levy, that is at 2.5 million, and we have kept that amount steady since 2017. And this debt levy funds 2 debt issuance, and it is the 2021 tax abatement bonds. And last year we were able to refund the 2014 tax abatement bonds, and with that refund, we were able to reduce future debt payments by about $1.9 million. And the tax abatement bonds go to fund the pool expansion project. The other debt that is funded by this levy is the 2020A refunding bonds, and those are for the Southwest Fire Station and then also for the park referendum bond. The city does have a policy to limit the debt between 5 and 15% of the general fund expenditures. And with this debt levy, we are between 4 to 5% of the general fund expenditures. So we are pretty much on the low end of what our policy states. So for market value, as you've probably heard across kind of the nation, statewide, and suburbs, market values have been increasing, mainly in the residential properties. And nationally, for residential properties, it has increased by about 20%. Statewide, 15%, and then compared to the suburban Twin Cities, it's about 18%. For the city of Eden Prairie, our market value has increased to $13.5 billion, which is a 15% increase over 2022. And for residential property, the values have increased by about 19.2%, commercial 0.8%, and then apartments 4.4%. And this is something that Rick will go into more detail later in the presentation. And so based off of these market value increases, residential property this year for a median value home is valued at $513,200. Last year, that median value home was valued at $430,400. And so the city tax impact on that median value home is $1,524, which is a $100 increase or a 7% increase. For an apartment with a $5 million value, their city tax portion would be $18,361, which is a $1,359 decrease or a 6.9% decrease. And then for commercial with a $2 million value, their city portion would be $7,285 or a $365 decrease. So if you were to look at the overall city or the overall property tax impact, which would include the city, the county, the school district, the state, and some other taxing jurisdictions, a median value home would pay $5,806, which is a $508 increase or 9.6%. An apartment would pay $67,781, or a decrease of $3,364. And then a commercial property would pay $58,826, which is a $3,462 decrease. And then just one item to note is these values or these amounts are based off of the truth in taxation notices, and it does not include the referendum that had passed for the school district back in November.
Tammy, can I stop you on this slide just so people can look at it a little bit? I've had this conversation with staff, with Mr. Getcho and others, that when we set a budget, which is how much money gets spent back on the residents, when we set a budget, that drives the levy, how much we collect, and the levy then drives the taxes, but there's a lot of other variables out there. So we have a 3.2% budget increase, which means that we're going to supply all the benefits and the quality of life attributes that we've been, characteristics that we've been overseeing. I don't want to say we're providing them, but over the last year, and we're going to maintain that quality, if not improve in a couple areas, for the 3.2% budget increase. But if we increased our budget zero, there's so many other variables and factors out there that this residential tax, based on state formula, based on the apartments and commercials going down and residential going up, people would still potentially see, and I know you probably haven't figured that exact number, but it might be in the 5 to 6% tax increase range if we increased our budget zero. And if we did increase our budget zero, we would have to lay off police officers. I don't mean to paint a dark picture, but we would. We'd have to cut back on public safety. We'd have to cut back on plowing and getting roads done within 12 hours. We'd have to cut back on parks. I mean, the point is to maintain the quality, because our 3.2%, a lot of that's just to keep the same people doing the same thing, because that's in salaries and benefits. So I think people need to understand that no one likes to pay more taxes, and it's frustrating this year to see our residential taxes going up on average. In fact, is that a median? It's not a mean. It's a median number, right? Correct. So half of all residents in Eden Prairie have higher than 9.6% tax increases, and half have lower. But the council's role in that has been to raise our budget 3.2%, which in essence keeps us about the same, because a lot of that's salary and benefits. So I think people need to understand the variables are so complicated and so many when it goes to setting the actual taxes that people pay based on legislative action, county, school district, referendums, et cetera. But even our portion gets complicated.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then Rick does have a slide later on to kind of show the change in the tax if you were to change the levy by a certain percent. So.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun there, but that slide I thought was important to make that comment, because that's a tough figure to look at, the 9.6.
Right.
And we know that. We're really sensitive. The council, It's not us and them, we're you, right? So we're residents living in the city. I don't think any of us are super wealthy, probably wealthier than I am, but we pay the taxes. And so we're frustrated too, but the variables, again, are out, so many outside of our control. And I'm not just passing the buck, it's just taxes are complicated.
All right, and so this slide just kind of breaks down the overall property tax on a median value home. You can see Hennepin County would receive 31%. The city of Eden Prairie receives 26% of that total tax. School district 35%, and then other taxing jurisdictions 8%. And then for a commercial property, Hennepin County would receive 14%, the city 12%, the state 22%, the school district 15%, and then fiscal disparities 33%, and then other taxing jurisdictions 4%. So if you were to take that city tax on the median value home and divide it out on a monthly basis, that median value home would pay $127 a month, with about $120 going to the general fund and then $7 going to the debt and capital. And so for that $120 that is going to the general fund, approximately $40 would be going for police services, $33 going to park and recreation for all the park and rec programs that they offer, for your trails, your parks, for all the maintenance that they do for all those trails and parks. $16 for your fire services, and then $16 for public works for plowing your streets and keeping the roads and trails in good condition. And then 11% to administration and 6%, or $11 to administration and $6 to community development. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Rick.
I do find that interesting, the last slide, going back to that. 1566, both fire and public works. What are the odds? So, as Tammy said, I'm going to discuss tax impact and a little bit about values and some of the shift. Before I do that, I just want to take a step back and talk about the process again. And it's a 2-year budget process. And our city process actually starts out the two-year budgeting process following the city's results of our community survey. So the mayor mentioned earlier the desire to maintain service levels and in some cases add in certain areas, enhance certain areas, reconfigure certain areas. So about 2 years ago, the results of the survey that we did at that time had a couple big major points. And one was that the residents of our city that were surveyed, and this was a statistically significant valid survey within plus or minus 2%, really rate the desirability of living and raising a family in Eden Prairie. Also feeling very safe here, and also feeling that we have some of the best park recreation and natural environment amenities in the state, if not the country. We also receive very high marks for our city services. And finally, and this is the case again, about 2 years ago, the economy was in a good place, but housing affordability is an issue. So that's kind of what got this going 2 years ago. And then that led to some council discussion on strategic planning and eventually the budgeting process. And the city has maintained 6 major goals that focus on community well-being, providing efficient services, having a beautiful and preserved environment, a sense of community, being innovative and sustainable in what we do, and having economic vitality. That's been the same for quite a while. The budget, the 22 and 23 budget, also had its own goals. And that was to not only provide those high-level services, but at a very reasonable tax impact. I always call that the value proposition, what you pay for and what you get. Tammy's example of the $127 a month for what you receive in the city services, do you feel that? Do you get value for that? Also, value in our employees as well. And you saw some increases that are close to 6% in terms of wages and benefits, and that is due to needing to be competitive in a market for employees and doing a compensation study, but at the same time saying that we came to you or coming to you with a budget actually that only increases 3.2%. The collection of taxes is at the 4.5% range, but a lot of that has to do with being efficient and innovative in the services that we deliver. So, several examples of that include our sustainability efforts. We've been able to, for a program that we started maybe 15 years ago, in terms of fuel efficiency and energy efficiency in our city, has saved in the area of fuel several $100,000 a year and over $250,000 a year in terms of energy savings. We had the award for the fleet electrification, and actually there's a savings to the city over time with that. So we have a lot of different practices where we're trying to save on the services that we deliver and the efficiency. When it comes to like the true nuts and bolts of finances, we want to have a balanced budget. We want to conservatively estimate our revenues and our expenditures. So if we have excess revenue, we're able to put that into some of our capital plans, but also conservatively estimate expenditures so we're never over budget. As we talked about earlier, always reviewing our fees and charging. And finally, you're going to see our capital improvement program following this presentation. Specific council priorities in this 2-year budget and in the last year. I mentioned the sustainability. We've talked about the investment, the increase in investment in public safety coming out of COVID and really supporting these community events that we've had and adding community events and enhancing community events, promoting small business, working on our housing and race equity issues as well. All these initiatives are in this budget. So back to that piece about value and taxation. We mentioned some of these numbers. I want to mention that when you move from the value, the overall value of property, when you multiply that value by the class rates that exist for different types of property, you come up with what's known as a tax capacity, and I'm going to show that in a little bit. And this is that example again of an 18% increase in residential property this past year, far exceeding the commercial and apartment increases. I think it's been noted that the increase in residential values in 1 year is close to the last 5, 6, or 7 or 8 years combined together to a point where it's not often the city assessors presenting at a city council meeting, but that's what he was doing this spring when we were seeing this valuation. And it's important to note as well, because people will ask about the value of their property. The values that were set in January of this year are the statements that you received in November for the taxes that you're going to pay next year. And that value was based on the sale of properties in Eden Prairie in your neighborhood. It's very, there really isn't much subjectivity to it for sales that occurred in the spring and summer of 21. So, here we are approaching 23, using a budget and a taxation policy off of sales of property in 21, but that's been the case for decades, for years and years. So everyone's going to receive a value statement in January. You're going to get a new one, and that's going to be based on sales of property from this past year. And we'll be here a year from now talking about the value that you received in January of 23 for your taxes in 24. It's how the system works.
And Mr. Getchell, just a thought there that, and this is in high generalities, but if all residential properties, in fact, let me step back from that. If all properties, commercial, apartments, and residential all went up the exact same percentage, if they all went up massively, if they doubled, everything doubled. So we went from 11 billion tax base to 22 billion. We still collect the 42 2 million in taxes that gets peanut buttered across whatever the tax base is. So in theory, if we doubled in our value, we would pay no more tax. What creates the differences in tax is if they moved separately. And in this case, residential went up more than apartment and commercial. And even within residential, there were neighborhoods that during that time went up more than others. So if people's concerns are, which is legit, if my house is worth 100,000 less this year than it was at the peak a year ago, as long as everybody's went down, which they don't, they move differently, but if they all went down the same percentage, then my taxes would stay the same. So it's the other variables that are creating the movement in taxes that a lot of that's out much or way outside the control of the city. I just wanted to throw in
No,
that piece.
absolutely, Mayor. I could think over the last 12 years of these presentations, you would have a levy that was flat and you would have taxes going up 5%. You would have the levy go up 5% and taxes went up 2%. It just is different every year depending on what's happening. So this slide, I'm gonna have a few more, shows that shift in Eden Prairie just in the last 2 years alone. You see this jump in the pie. This is the pie. I'm going to call this the pie. The pie of collecting those taxes that the mayor's talking about. That the pie is bigger for residential. It's almost 4% bigger due to that shift. So you have more value in residential. You're going to collect more taxes in that area due to that shift. So, and Tammy alluded to this earlier, that the tax impact of the median value home 7%, and it's down almost 5% and 7% in those other areas. Overall, so again, you see that value being at over 13 billion. The city's tax rate actually decreased. Our tax rate is under 30%. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more in detail as well. But that tax rate is really how you compare or look at other communities across the state of Minnesota. I always tell somebody, if you want to compare city taxes, look at what that city tax rate is, because you take any home in the state of Minnesota and you multiply it by that tax rate, that's the taxes that you pay. So some cities' tax rates are 50%. And some city tax rates are in the 40s. Some are in the 20s. Those are more maybe smaller cities or rural, but we have a very, very competitive low tax rate. This is just a quick graph of all the different types of rates there are. There are, I think, more than 50 types of rates for the type of property you have. There's different ways that the state says, and these are state rates, the state taxes cabins differently than agricultural property, different than apartment property, different than low income apartment property, different than certain commercial property. And so there's all these different rates. The key is, in this example, is you take a home, and this is what I was talking about. In the case of Eden Prairie, a home at 513,200, our median valued home, you multiply that by 1%. This is again throughout the state of Minnesota, up to $500,000, and you get your own personal tax capacity. Interestingly, all homes values that area over 500,000 gets taxed at a higher rate. That's taxed at 1.25%. Then you get your personal tax capacity. That rate applies in every home in the state of Minnesota. You multiply that by that city rate. So again, if your $513,000 home in Bloomington would get multiplied by a tax rate that might be mid-30s, you have a different city tax. Our city tax comes to the $1,490. What is happening also with the shift is that median valued home used to be under 500. So there's an additional amount of money now on that median valued home. I think Tammy showed, was it $100 of total annual tax, city tax, more than last year. I think I calculated at least $10 of that is due to being over $500,000. So that's always something to be aware of. Then as we move to what the city's doing and what we know some other cities are doing, compared to our peers, and I talked about this in September, that tax collection levy increase of 4.5% is the lowest that I'm aware of in comparable cities. Now, what I will say is all these other cities on here, this was their proposed levy that their city council set in September. Tonight or this week or by the end of the month, they would finalize those numbers. So many of these cities may bring some of these proposed levies down. That's up to their respective city councils. But I still think at 4.5%, we will be the lowest, if not one of the lowest cities for a tax levy change.
And Mr. Getchell, for quite a while in the last 10 years, I haven't done it with this new modeling, but if you take the average house, so if you took the $513,000 house in Eden Prairie and you pick it up and you plop it down, I'm not going to name cities because I'm not positive about this, but in the older days, you plopped it down in Bloomington, we were lower. You plopped it down in Minnetonka, we were lower. You plopped it down in Minneapolis, we were lower. I mean, so you can't compare, like some cities have lower average priced houses, so they might claim they have lower taxes because if you took their $300,000 average and put it in Eden Prairie, we'd be lower than them. But we have some of the low, because of our tax rate, we have some of the lowest taxes on apples to apples similar houses around.
We do, Mayor, and I guess I did call out a few cities by knowing their rates are higher than ours. And a couple thoughts on that would be, yeah, we do show that graphically how we've been at over the last decade and continue to be that lower third, if not more. I think what's interesting about Eden Prairie now, that's the city tax. You have to look at the total tax. So someone will say to me, my taxes are lower in X city in Carver County. And I'll say that's because the Carver County taxes are lower than the Hennepin County taxes, but the city of Eden Prairie taxes are lower than the city you're mentioning in Carver County. So I only show city taxes, but same with schools. And I do know our school district tax rate is also very, very competitive. Hennepin County, amongst counties, it's one of the higher county rates. So you've got to look at the total bill.
And we do have 3 school districts in the city of Eden Prairie, even though Eden Prairie is 95%. We do have a small section sliver up north of Minnetonka and a really tiny section of Hopkins. So their school district levies will be different than the Eden Prairie School District, creating identical houses sitting across a border with varying taxes, total tax bill.
Mr.
Correct.
Ketchum,
Correct. Yeah.
Mr. Ketchum, question or clarification. When you look at your total taxes, right, and the city tax is what, 32% of the total amount or somewhere there?
It was less than 30%, I thought, the piece of the pie.
28,
Piece of the pie.
28.8.
So the
26%.
26%. The remaining is the county tax and the school district tax, right? 3 taxes, right?
Most of it,
most of it.
Councilmember Narayan. You also have the Metropolitan Council.
Okay,
You also have the
Small
watershed
yeah,
districts.
yeah.
okay.
And then you also have my personal favorite, the Mosquito Control District, that sprays for mosquitoes in Eden Prairie, but they actually are a taxing authority as well.
But
So
just-
there are these other, but those 3 make up probably 95%.
So what we are talking about, just the city tax today, just to clarify that.
That's all we
right?
control, yeah.
I know, that's what we control, but that's what we're talking about. That's a 3.2% increase.
4.5 on
4.5.
res, yeah.
Yeah, and 4.5 on the levy, but we
the
did
budget
show you,
increase.
we did show you some slides on the total tax that we
Okay.
do not control, but just so you know what, when people look at their bill, what they're looking at. So we've shown a few that show jurisdictions that we don't control, but they're on there. A couple more slides on levy and tax impact, as was mentioned earlier. 1% of the levy equates to about $400,000. So if you actually wanted to bring down the median valued home impact to 0, we would have to cut close to $3 million of the tax levy. So that's something that the mayor alluded to earlier. And you would then see, commercial and apartments going down, much more than that. But every single year is different. And again, a lot of times you would argue for that home that went from 500 to 600,000 in value. There is again about, well, let's use a median valued home that went from that 430 to 513. that the tax went up 7%, the value went up 18%, but you still have that increased value in your asset. But we don't control that. We set what our levy is going to be, and based on what the values are, it just comes out differently for every single taxpayer. And then finally, related to value, there's that 19% again on the median valued home. And understanding that the median is the 19%, there are people that are less and more. So there are people in Eden Prairie that, not many, but some that their value only went up 10%, their taxes are going down. And then there are some that their value might be going up 25% and their taxes might be going up 13%. So I'm kind of showing where that break is. Even at that 15% increase in value, the tax increase is just over 2.5%. So those are probably the different bands of properties because everyone is different. And then finally, I just want to mention fiscal disparities. It could be a whole hour on this program, but in a nutshell, in the metro area of Minnesota and very few other areas of the country, there's a portion of all commercial taxes that are shared. And then there's a redistribution amongst communities based on how much tax growth there has been since 1971. Eden Prairie, because we are a newer community, a lot of our commercial development came way after 1971. We are the fourth largest contributor, or I like to say loser, in the program behind Minneapolis and Bloomington, and I believe not St. Paul, because St. Paul is actually a large gainer, but we're the fourth largest, Plymouth, the fourth largest contributor. And what that means, just from a transparency process, is there's actually a little bit of shrinking of our tax base that occurs because we're giving up some of our commercial tax base to other cities to level the playing field. And if that program did not exist, we would actually see a decrease. Actually, the increase in the tax would actually be 5.4% less than what it is now due to that program. So there's been legislation over the years to change that or tinker with that program, and the council had a workshop tonight where we heard, the legislative issues that are coming up in session. But it's just important to note that our residential taxpayers are actually affected by this commercial tax-based sharing program that exists in the state of Minnesota.
And maybe just to level set the concept or idea, and I'm not sure, Mr. Getchell, if you know what it looks like this year, but I know in the last couple of years, a lot of people may think that some of the wealthier suburbs like Eden Prairie that did their development since 1971 are paying the largest shares so that places like maybe like Minneapolis, more urban centers, can benefit. But Minneapolis actually became a giver or a loser because, correct, over a couple years ago because of all their new commercial growth. And so it's kind of like TIF. It's capturing a percentage of future growth and then taking that, pooling it, and then sharing that back out to communities that are not experiencing the growth but still need the support. Now, that's a whole philosophical place that we can go offline on at some point. But, and I do think it needs to be tweaked. And I think at some point it begins to be unfair as it has gone through now 50 years, even not just unfair to Eden Prairie, but just unfair in the way it's being administered. But hopefully the legislature can take a look at that.
Yes, that's correct. And then the last slide is simply due to these increases in residential values, we want to promote some of the programs that are out there at the state level. And there are a few, and the big one is the homestead credit refund. And there's two different types of programs. One is somewhat based on individuals' income that they can get a credit. But there's another program that has nothing to do with household income. And simply, if you own your home and you owned it for the last tax year, and your property taxes went up 12%, regardless of income, you should apply for the credit, and there is money that you can receive from the state of Minnesota. And there's a lot of money that goes left uncredited at the state. So we're gonna keep pushing that out because obviously when our average increase in the residential single-family home is 18%, there's a lot of people out there who qualify for this program. And again, there's another program based on income, but we don't want that money to go unclaimed in our community, so we definitely want to promote that as well. And that is the last slide I have, Mayor. Tammy and I can certainly answer any questions that you may have. But before you in the packet is the resolution to approve recommend approval of the budget and tax levy for 2023. And you would need to hold a public hearing before you do that.
What's your pleasure, council? Do you think we should open up the public hearing, have it, close the public hearing, and then have our conversation? Would that be acceptable?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Okay. People in the audience, this is a public hearing on the resolution to certify the 2023 property tax levy and adopt the 2023 budget and adopt the 2023 HRA tax levy. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the council this evening on this item? Mr. Olson, come forward. Give your name and address. I could probably give it for you, but I think I'll let you.
And I'll keep it short. Greg Olson, 7373 Ann Court. And Mr. Getchow, thank you for that presentation. I think it knocked down a lot of my questions, which still are out there. I'll just say, I think this whole process for me is still like really confusing. It's less than transparent, and I'll just leave it with you this, that I'd like making this process more transparent be a priority for the city council so that we're not scratching our heads every year like this. Thank you.
It's great advice, and I'm not, I won't be defensive on that. I just know that, we can talk and talk and talk and share and share and share and communicate, and we try. I agree with you. We should try again and again and communicate again. It's hard. It's a tough process, but thank you. I agree with you. Others? Name and address, and thanks, Craig.
Hello, I'm Craig Armstrong, 17969 Cascade Drive. Thanks, Rick, for the overview. We've been talking a lot recently, but I just have a few other questions that I wrote down. Regarding commercial property in particular, is there any one or two properties that changed valuation that might have driven that a little bit more than the other ones you can think of?
I wouldn't know that off the top of my head, and I don't know if the city assessor, if we'd have to look that up, or our city assessor's here, if he would have an answer to that. We can, if you want to keep going with the questions.
Sure. One other question was, in the city levy comparisons were the top one or one of the better ones as far as rate increase. But if we had that same thing just laid out by category for residential, commercial, and apartment, so you could see what the tax changes in each of those were. My belief from looking at some of the documentation is that Eden Prairie, kind of the residents, we got the short end of the straw. Now, I understand that the valuations change. I get that. But I would like to see what that happened at different cities around the county as well.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add, and I thought about this, when you mentioned this at open podium, is so there are cities that are 90% residential, so they don't have much of a commercial tax base. That's going to affect the shift. Then there are cities like Eden Prairie and a few others that we have a very healthy commercial industrial tax base. So I think that would affect us more with the shift. But I think, as the mayor said, we can look at Plymouth and Bloomington, Minnetonka, cities that probably have a pretty good makeup like ours with commercial. But I can think of cities that are 80 to 90% of their value is in residential, and that's going to be a different outcome.
You raised some really good questions this evening, so at the open podium as well. It got me thinking, again, the apple-to-apple comparison. Let's find a city that's really close to us. But truthfully, let's pick out a city. I don't even know what that would be. Duluth is not exactly a good comparison, but a city that has older commercial. Did their older commercial vary compared to our newer commercial, and therefore did our newer commercial go down at different rates than their older, trying to see if that may have impacted what you picked up in the data. And I'd like to know more about that as well. So yeah, keep going with.
So one other comment that was made, I didn't hear the percentage of houses on residential that went over that 500,000 that impacted to the next 1.25% rate. Could you repeat that again?
So I didn't have in my presentation the number of properties that went over. I could probably find that.
What's a median? So can't you
Yeah.
just take our 20 or 8? What do we have? 18,000. Are you thinking
I'll just say that mine
single
did.
family homes? Or
So my
You're one of
20,
them.
my
Yeah.
less than 25% went up a lot more than the 13.7%.
Gotcha.
Right. So, but there's a number of properties individually that I can estimate, but when we show that average example, it takes an extra hit because it's over 500,000.
Right. But again, if it is a median, 50%, so again, if we have 18,000 single-family homes, I'm not counting townhomes, guess we could. But let's just use the number, I may be wrong, 18,000 homes, so 9,000 are above 513, right? And 9,000 are below, so to your point, maybe get a bell curve of some sort and figure out what percentage are above 700,000, type of thing.
And to the prior commenters, just more transparency. And I think you guys are probably going to go down and vote tonight. I would propose looking at that a little bit more and coming back some answers and propose a slightly smaller budget increase than the 4.5%. So that's my final comment. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And just clarification, our budget was 3.2, and I did ask the staff to at least look at that. If we had a 0% budget increase, what would the average tax go up? And I think it was around 5%. So it drops from whatever it was, 7, but that was everything commercial and apartment. So residential was 9.4, but we didn't get bang for our buck. But we deeply impacted quality of life if we have to cut police officers, fire, that kind of thing. So I understand. But I just, again, the variables are so many out there that are out of our control. Great. Others? All right. Seeing none, let's go ahead and close
have
the
some
public
comments.
hearing.
Okay.
And then we'll have council is that fine? We need to close the
That's
public
fine.
hearing before we
Yeah,
talk.
that's fine.
So is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, conversation. So Councilmember Ryan.
I'll go from, you want to go first?
No,
I will go. I'll go first. Yeah.
you were the,
So a couple of thoughts. It's surprising me why the apartment percentage went lower since we have added so many new apartments in our city. So when you increase more apartments, even the percentage lower, the revenue comes in more, right? So explain to me that part. I don't understand
So
that.
yeah, your apartment value is based on new construction and the value of current construction. There is new single-family homes, new commercial, new apartments. All apartments, all homes are valued on what they've sold for. So it's just, it's market-driven. So I'm trying to think about the presentation that you got in the spring, because the other part is, remember, these are two completely different separate processes. Setting the value of property is completely different than setting your budget and tax levy. So I'm thinking back to a lot of time we did spend on single-family homes, but I think it's the same thing with apartments. What are similar apartment buildings selling for? What actually have they sold for? Just looking at the sales.
Yeah, so residential.
But you can correct me. Am I right on, Mr. City Assessor? Thank you. Yeah. So it's sales. It's what, he's got data on these are the apartment buildings that have sold in our area and this is what they sold for. So I have to set the value at this by law. I have to set this value. Now the question might be that I think we're hearing would be, are the sales of apartment buildings in other cities, how are they different than ours? Or, because that's what I said at Open Podium, that there may be sales of apartment buildings in other cities that went up or down more than ours, but I don't want to be too general, but in my discussions with all the other cities, these increases of that we're seeing are the same in the other cities.
So if you increase number of apartments in the city, is that change the dynamics?
It could, because you're adding more value.
Revenue,
Yeah.
more revenue.
Well, more value, yes.
Value, yeah.
Yeah, it's not the revenue of
Oh.
the individual apartments, it's the value of the entire building. But I to your point, if we have, making this up, 20 apartment buildings in the city, and we put 4 brand new ones in the last 2 years, that's a value that we know kind of what they spent, but we also then know what people are coming in offering to buy the older apartment buildings. Did that possibly drive down the value of some of the older apartment buildings that sold? Maybe. I mean, that's what we need to probably look at.
So what I'm thinking is.
I don't think that's the case, but
Yeah,
we can
I mean,
have
I
some
don't either. I'm just
analysis,
saying
yeah.
that I don't know exactly why value of an apartment building in Eden Prairie went down
Yeah, I don't
6%,
get that
except that maybe there's part that we have more of them. I don't know the dynamics of that.
The other aspect is also in Eden Prairie, the rent going up, right? So the value should go up, technically speaking.
I mean, in theory, but it's market driven. So
I know,
if there's,
I know. I mean,
if there's
we
10
might-
apartment buildings on the market and you want to buy one, then you're going to probably be able to get it cheaper than you would have if there's only 2 on the market.
I guess so. Okay, I think I'm not sure I understand all of that, but let's move on. The other part is that couple of percentage, they end up like at 10%. I mean, why do we need to, like city services, like community center and so on? I forgot exactly where you are talking about here. End up like 10%, right?
I think well, the 10% number I referred to is back when I was talking about the membership fees
Just the
going up. It's not part of any budget category, I don't think.
But that actually would lower our tax impact if we're raising more fees to pay their own way. This is the page there that would show the percentages of the different areas.
Yeah, I'm just curious why that big jump compared to the other ones are just lower jumps. I wish I could find the page here. Right here.
Okay, so which slide is that? Is that the general
Slide,
fund?
What page?
slide 3. Is it slide 3? On the top?
Oh, page
Or
3.
page
Slide
3,
8.
slide 5.
So,
That's the percentage of the budget. That's not the increase.
Oh, that's not the increase. Okay,
yes,
okay.
that's the
Increase is on the next slide below that.
So of the general fund revenue, 77% comes from taxes,
Right.
10% comes from charges for services. It's just how, of all the revenue, how is the
That's
revenue
how they
split?
split.
That's not an increase in anything.
All right, thank you.
Yep,
Appreciate that.
you're welcome.
I'm done.
Okay. Can I,
Council Member Toomey.
I just have a couple of comments, nothing major, but it's, to me, I mean, it's a great thing to see that the budget increased only by 3.2%, so it's well below the rate of inflation. And one of the things that that the city has done that showed real like fiscal responsibility is adjusting your health care. I mean, that went down a lot, your insurance, so I really think that's great and showing that, obviously they're great at doing their job, so thank you very much. And how does our levy increase? Do we know yet how it would compare to other cities, or was that one of the?
Yeah, no, it's okay. So, tonight, in the next couple weeks, all cities are taking up their levy approval, so I don't know where it's all gonna end up, but of the 15 cities that I showed, or 12 cities, ours is the lowest
Oh, yeah,
increase.
you're right, sorry.
It's okay.
But, and then, that's it, I just had one comment about the apartments, but Councilmember Narayan pretty much covered that, so.
Great, thanks. Nothing, Councilmember, you're okay? Anything else then?
No, I was just gonna say 3.2 overall looks good, looks acceptable. Then when you divide that into like Greg's Point or seems like my neighborhood, property value went way more than some other places, so we stuck paying more taxes. Or that's a part of the process, I understand.
Yeah, Craig raised some really good points that I do want to get clarified at some point, but the entire mega issue is very complicated with so many moving parts and variables that it gets frustrating many times to us, especially as we're trying to explain how do we only spend 3.2% more of our residents' money, but the impact on them. And again, because apartments go up and down and commercial and then residential, and then within residential goes up and down differently, and different neighborhoods go up and down. And if somebody put an addition on, it's a zero-sum game in a sense that we raise the same, I think it was 42 million, but in taxes, we raised the 42 million. We spread that across the tax base according to all the different intricate layer of rules out there. I do want to add one point. I do read Next Door now and then just to kind of keep a hand on the pulse of what's happening in the community. And I've noted quite a bit that a lot of accusations sometimes come out about us, wanting just more money, or just all we want about is more money for the city, which, number one, we only manage development. We don't go out and try to get something that is more money. But the reality is that if our city is developing and we're getting organic growth, we're building our tax base. And that's what creates the tax rate that comes down, because you're spreading the 42 million now across a larger amount of properties, which, people often ask, when you put in a whole housing development, doesn't that get a lot more dollars? Well, it does. It doesn't get a whole lot, but it gets us more tax dollars. We still have to supply police services and fire services and plow streets. But over time, that tax basis that grows from 11 to 12 to 13 billion to 14 billion, if it doesn't grow by the inflation factor, which in this case some of it did, but if it grows because of new development, that's truly positively impacting the taxes that we pay. Maybe they're not coming down, but they're not growing as fast. That's not to say we just should grow across the city, because again, we manage that growth. We just take open space land that's owned privately and we zone and based on our policies and procedures. I just want to say that people that are totally anti-growth, that zero growth on any piece of property, and they come back and say, keep our taxes low, is completely inconsistent. It just doesn't make sense. And I hope that, through time, they'll take one of our citizens academies, or, really learn more about how this city operates, because there's so many conflicting ideas out there. I do like Next Door, though, in terms of giving us feedback from what the people, what a lot of people, some people, a few people are thinking. All right, any other further comments or questions? Mr. Getchell, anything?
I do not, no.
Okay, you looked perplexed for the moment, but were you thinking about what I was saying, or you can disagree?
It's a different word, not perplexed, but it's okay. It's all good.
All right, let's go ahead and complete the motion then, I believe, correct? Because we did not make the motion, we simply closed the public hearing. So if you, Councilmember Toomey, if you would make the rest of the motion.
And adopt a resolution certifying the 2023 property tax levy to be $44,909,284, and approve the 2023 budget of $57,395,407 as reviewed by the council, and approve the HRA tax levy and budget of $205,000.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any further discussion? I'll just add one comment. I've said this before, this type of comment, when you want to see what the values are of the people of Eden Prairie as represented through its representatives on this council, go back to 1965, go back to 1977, go back to 1983, and study their budget. Because where the money gets spent is representative of what we value based on how we represent the people of Eden Prairie. So this is in many ways the most important vote we take of the year. And again, it's not taken lightly, nor is it planned out lightly. It takes a two-year budgeting process. We have staff that do a phenomenal job. Thank you, Tammy, and your staff, your team, and Mr. Getchell. Obviously, we are citizen government. We can't do it without our professional staff, so thank you for all that you do. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Mr. Getchell, capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Every other year, so this is not every year, we update our 10-year capital improvement plan. So Tammy has a presentation, briefer than the budget presentation, but nonetheless a presentation where she'll lead us through our proposed capital plan. I just want to mention a couple things. She may say this as well. You devoted a few workshops to this, so you've seen quite a bit of this, but I think there's a few hundred pages in the packet that make up the actual draft of the plan. So whether it be the capital improvement plan, which this book right here will all be bound and available. Won't be bound on the website, but you can find it on the website along with the final budget. And then it's really important to note that this is a plan. So it's a plan for all the city's capital projects over a 10-year period, greater than $20,000. But the vast majority of the projects you'll see individually again, whether it's the reconstruction of a new road, a new park building, a major remodeling project, these all come back to you. It's just really important for us to have a 10-year plan to know how we're going to fund all of these projects. So with that, I will turn things over to our finance manager, Tammy Wilson, and again, a presentation, a public hearing, and then simple adoption that we're asking you to approve the capital improvement plan.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. So I'm going to present the 2023 through 2032 capital improvement plan. So the purpose of the meeting is to provide the 10-year capital improvement plan information to the citizens, and then to provide time for them to provide feedback, and then also for the council to adopt this plan. So the objectives of our CIP is to plan for capital maintenance and improvement by preparing this 10-year CIP. We want to provide consistent investment in city equipment, facilities, and infrastructures. And we want to preserve and expand capital in a way that is sustainable and affordable for our Eden Prairie citizens. So a few policies with the capital improvement plan is we want to confine our long-term borrowing to projects that cannot be financed from any other revenue sources. And when we do issue debt, we want to have the payback of that debt be over the expected life of that capital improvement project. We also want to maintain good relations with our bond rating agencies and keep them informed of our plans in order to attain and keep that high bond rating that we have. And then we maintain a 10-year capital improvement plan for all projects over $25,000. And we will update this 10-year CIP every 2 years. And then we've also dedicated any liquor profits to fund the capital improvement program. So for the proposed 10-year CIP, the projects come to $303 million. And the last CIP was about $299 million. And then one thing to note is in this plan, we've taken out approximately $3.8 million of tax improvement projects and moved them into the strategic plan that was approved by council back in November. And we felt it just aligned better with that plan instead of the CIP plan. So this chart is just a breakdown of the projects by the different divisions. So you can see engineering is at $173 million, park and recreation, $25 million, the water fund, 2 million, fleet services, 21 million, fire, 16 million, police, 14 million, stormwater, 10 million, facilities, 6 million, wastewater, 6 million, IT, 5 million, and then sustainability, 4 million.
Tammy, just leave it there for a second, just to let people know too, those are huge numbers, 173 million over 10 years, but a lot of the funding funding sources, there's state aid in there, correct, for roads, there's, I'm assuming our franchise fee monies that we're raising. So in other words, the funding is not, I know you kind of said it already, I just want to make sure that people understand that our capital improvement projects have funding sources that are often outside, if not almost always, but often outside of our normal general budget.
So, question, so this is for 10-year period, right?
Correct.
So it's a kind of rolling 10 years?
Yes, every 2 years, we update the rolling 10 years.
Rolling 10 years,
Yep.
right? So when you say 173 million in a per yearly basis,
It's going to
not
change.
small.
It will change.
It'll change.
Am I thinking that right?
So 173 million for
10 years, right?
Engineering.
Last
10 years.
slide, right? So
Yeah.
17 million
A
per
year, but you're saying as we update it, that might become 19 million a year in 5 years, that kind of a
No,
thing?
no, I'm thinking about just clarifying it, 173 million, when you look like big number over 10-year period.
Right.
But then you look at 17 million per year, rolling, it's not that big for the whole city of.
It's still big, but again, our funding
Yeah, funding,
sources
yeah.
are not the general fund, yeah. Thank you, sorry, Tammy.
Nope, that's okay. And then, so this is kind of the breakdown of our funding sources for all those different projects that we show. So you can see the payment management fund, so that's where we get our franchise fees. So over that 10-year period, we're going to collect approximately $59 million to fund those projects. And then we also receive state aid of approximately $36 million for all those road projects that are in the CIP. And then we have debt of 34 million. And then federal, will receive some federal money of about 27 million. And then we have some user charges for the fleet internal service to pay for all our vehicles of 20 million. And then we have like our stormwater, water fund, and our wastewater, where we get the user charges from the usage of those. And then we have some county money of about 13 million for various street projects. And then some other funding sources, it seems like a lot of money, but it's like for a lot of different revenue sources, kind of like assessments, MnDOT, SAC and WAC, and park improvements.
So liquor funds in the other?
The liquor fund would be part of the capital maintenance and reinvestment fund.
Got it, but about 8 million of that, right? I mean, it's
Correct,
significant. Yeah.
over 10 years, correct.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I think is that very important number to highlight, right? Because
I mean, if we didn't have municipal liquor, we'd have to figure out a way to come up with that $8
Come up with
million.
it.
That's not a small
right,
chunk of money. Yeah.
big number.
Yeah. So yeah, so we have various funding sources to pay for all those projects within the plan. So just to highlight some of the projects that are in this plan, for Public Works and the transportation, we have the Dell Road project, which is about 7.9 million, and that will take place in 2024 through 2026. Scenic Heights Road is about a $4.5 million project, and that will take place in 2026. Riverview Road is about a $1.3 million project to be done in 2027. And then the traffic signals at Prairie Center Drive in Franlow is about a $1.5 million project, and that would be taking place in 2023 and 2024. And then we also have the county state aid Highway 1 Pioneer Trail. It's the bridge over the Hennepin County Railroad Association. And that is about a $7.8 million project. And that will take place over the years of 2023 through 2026, with the majority of the costs in 2026.
Are we guessing at that? Doesn't that have to hit the county budget cycle? I mean, it's not our money, right?
So, Mayor Case, there will be a city portion, approximately 20% of that project will be city responsibility. And this is actually some grant funding that has come through recent legislation at the federal level. That
So is it in their 5-year plan? I mean, we know this is going to take place?
Yeah, the Metropolitan Council will have to approve this, I believe, at their next meeting, but the Transportation Advisory Board has recommended approval. So it's 95% sure, yes.
Sure. Okay.
One question, can we carry over, let's say we could not spend all this money in 10 years, can you over to 11th year, 12th year? You can, there's no restriction in terms of carrying over?
No, so every 2 years, we'll update the plan, and then if we haven't spent the money, we carry it over to the next capital improvement
Well, and
plan.
a lot of this money we don't have yet. I mean, it's not like we have 127 million sitting in our hands.
That's
just-
our
yeah,
budget.
Right.
So the reason I was asking is, if the state government infrastructure funding, if we get some, right, that will help us to do this budget, right?
Correct, yes. So we usually ask for the state aid funding after the project has been completed. And it's usually and Robert can explain that better than I can.
Yeah, so the way state aid works is there's a formula based on population, number of miles of roads that you have. So every city gets an allocation every year, and that's placed into an account, but it can only be used when the project's done. So typically, the city will upfront the project, or sometimes we'll actually use that, we'll get an advance on that funding. When the project's done, you can spend down your account. But I forget exactly what our annual apportionment is. I want to say it's around $3 to $4 million. Certain percentage of that can go towards maintenance projects. The other portion can only go toward capital. So there's kind of some rules on how it's used, but annually we get an allocation based on our needs.
Thank you.
And then some of the utility infrastructure projects we have is the water meter changeout, and that is about $3.3 million, and that would be over 2023 and 2024. And so right now, we are doing the water meter changeout for residential properties, and we're about halfway done with that. And so then this would be for the rest of the residential and then moving into commercial properties. And then we have the wells 17 and 18, which is about 3.7 million, and that would be done in 2023 and 2027.
And Robert, remind us how totally built out Eden Prairie, 2050, whatever, we'll get 75, 80,000 people. How many wells? We're getting really close, right? We have our current water storage capacity at where we need it to be, but how many wells will we need?
Yeah, so Mayor Case, we are currently under construction with well number 17 down off Village Woods Road. We have a plan looking at our 2040 horizon of having up to well number 20. So we'll see if conservation efforts continue to work like they have been. Maybe that number comes down. And, you know, the fact that we're, you know, developing apartment complexes, they're less intensive for water use. That isn't the big half-acre yards where a lot of that water ultimately ends up going for irrigation purposes. So kind of depends on how the city grows in the next 20 years as well. But
Okay.
It's probably around well 20 would be the 40,
Great, thank you.
2040.
Right, and then we have the Eden Prairie Road water main replacement of approximately $1 million for 2023. So for pavement management, so this is the fund that is funded mainly with the franchise fees. And this fund has maintenance of 580 lane miles of city streets. It also does the overlay, seal coats, reclamations, under seal, and fog seal. And then some of the larger projects that are also paid out of this pavement management fund are the upgrades to the Pioneer Trail, which is at $2 million in 2023. And then we have the Prairie Center Drive from Flying Cloud Drive to Technology Drive, and that's at about $800,000, and that will be in 2024. And then we have the Duck Lake Trail, which is about $4.2 million in 2026. And then some of the projects out of the Park and Recreation. And the funding source for a lot of these Park and Recreation funds is cash park fees. And so some of those are, we have the Miller Park Court Facility, we have the Round Lake Building Reconstruction, And then we have play equipment replacement, and so over the 10 years, the play equipment replacement is about 2.3 million. And then for trail maintenance, over the 10 years, it's about 4.4 million. And then the new trails and sidewalks, about 4.6 million over the 10 years. And then also the hard court maintenance, about 1.4 million over the 10 years. So public safety, we have the police remodel, which would include both the inside reconfiguration of the department, as well as the outside, kind of helping with the vehicles. We have the mobile command center replacement, about $500,000, and that is for 2026. And then we have the UAS equipment, about 90,000 in 2025 and in 2029. Then we have radio replacement, about 1.4 million in 2023 through 2027. And then the replacement of our fleet of fire equipment. And so our fire equipment is reaching their, kind of the end of their useful life of 20 years. So we just need to start replacing those.
Can I ask a question quickly? Chief, a conference I recently attended, they talked about police departments having drones that can get to the site of a car accident, the site of possibly a shooting, something they can get there faster than any squad car, and then scope out with their cameras and be able to, as squad cars are arriving or fires arriving, to tell everyone exactly what's going on. Do we have some of that technology now, and are we aiming for that?
Your Honor, there are definitely programs around the country that are testing that. There are FAA regulations that we're governed by on what we can do for what's called responding as that first responder. Within the state of Minnesota, that doesn't exist at this point. But we do have capabilities for search and rescue or finding fleeing suspects with the drones that we do have. Currently, but would always look for expanding that drone as a first responder.
We're under Flying Cloud Airport restrictions that we have to abide by as some of their
Yeah,
procedures.
a lot more restrictions for us around
Right.
being around the airport, so.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Tammy.
I have one quick question too. When is the police remodel supposed to take place? Or scheduled for?
No, go ahead.
In 2025.
2020, thanks.
But I was going to mention that they're planning of starting now. So, it's a pretty big remodel. So we've already begun discussions. And so council's probably going to see something, into 23 and 24 because it's a big project, but 25 is construction.
And then
I have a question as well. Police camera project, is that part of the capital improvement or did we completed that project? Now everybody has the camera?
These are replacements. So we have completed it. We have the body cameras and we have the squad cameras. They just have to be replaced and upgraded every 5 years.
Thank
So
you.
we have to keep these replacements in the plan.
Thank you.
All right, for sustainability, we have the Rink 1 ice plant and floor replacement. So that is to convert the rink from the refrigerant system to ammonia system. And that is about $2.5 million, and that is scheduled for later in the CIP plan. We do have the LED lighting, and that's the lighting for the fire stations, the senior center, fleets, and park shelters. And that's about $600,000 in 28 and 29. And then we have some HVAC systems, some electric vehicle charging stations, and then we also have the geothermal heat and cooling at the water treatment plant, and that's about 1.5 million, and that's for 2028. And then as we replace our fleet vehicles, we always look to see if we can replace them with electric vehicles when feasible.
Oh, Councilmember Freiberg.
I got a question. I just want to back up to public safety a second. We skipped over one part about, I understand replacing the fleet at the fire department. What kind of number are we talking about roughly on that? Just ballpark.
So it's, let's see,
Says the
it's
five,
like
but
about 1.1 to 1.3 per police vehicle.
so that's about, it's okay.
For fire vehicle.
I'm sorry, for fire vehicle.
Those are expensive. Chief is over there going, whoa, we're getting state of the art here.
That's what I'm looking more.
And
That's
then
that's a Tesla Model 10.
And then the ladder truck and the Quint truck is more expensive too, like 2.1 million and maybe 1.8 million.
Oh, wait, this was his big chance to speak.
I-
You cut him off.
You know what? If you would, please, Chief.
No, I was teasing, but yeah, he should come up. I was teasing you, but he should come up.
Well, no, you got me thinking. Okay. Okay, the 1.2 million, that, as far as for the 5 fire trucks, you know, that doesn't surprise me. What are the 2 Skeeter trucks, so I understand that, Chief?
Mayor, members of the council, the 2 Skeeter trucks are actually more like brush or utility vehicles. And what we found is that we're replacing them, excuse me, a little bit differently than what we would to also augment our airport response. So today, we have one of our engines that's set up more to be able to help us respond to the airport. But in the event that that station's not staffed, we can provide better service by having 2 vehicles that give us multiple applications. One being able to provide some response to our multi-areas around the city that might provide some type of brush or wildland fire, and then being able to respond to the airport in that type of response as well.
Do we charge MAC for any of those costs? No, you're laughing, but I'm serious because we're supplying an amazing service. No, we do not. Thank you. We'll take that offline in future conversations.
Well, I mean, I only chuckle because that came up with the lease discussions.
Yes,
Yeah.
I fully understand that. I just wanted to make sure with this new equipment, if there was any arrangement, I understand the past. Got it. Okay. We'll continue this conversation.
Roughly the cost of that, which,
About $400,000 per.
and then the ladder truck is about 2.1.
Correct.
And now this is, I don't know okay, a ladder truck and a tower truck, help me out.
So today we have 2 different pieces of aerial devices within the city. One is a stick and one has a bucket. And we have those 2 different capabilities to give us maneuverability in different areas where we may have fire operations. So the bucket or the tower gives us the ability to put people in that bucket up in an elevated platform to be able to deal with a situation. Much more safer in today's environment with how we fight fire. And instead of putting people on a roof, we put them in a device that makes it much safer for them.
Understood. Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Tammy, back to you.
All right. And I just have my last slide, just stating that we do want to maintain a good working relationship with our rating agencies. And with Moody's, we have a AAA rating since 2003. And for Standard & Poor's, we have the AAA rating since 2014.
Great, thank you so much. Again, thanks for your presentation and all the work you and your team have put into this. So council, this is a public hearing. Can we run this the same way where we open it up and then if we need to close it, we can close it and have conversation later. So this is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the city council on adopting the resolution approving the 2023 to 2032 capital improvement plan. Please come forward. All right, council, seeing none, why don't maybe we go ahead and make the entire motion, second it, and then we could have more conversation. So somebody?
Move to close the public hearing and adopt a resolution approving the 2023 to 2032 capital improvement plan.
Is there a second? All right, council, questions, comments? Councilmember Toomey.
Sorry, I think my microphone doesn't work. I seconded it. Anyway, sorry. No, I don't have any comments.
Oh, that was all about a second?
That was it.
That was a lot of effort
I was
for
having
just
a
a
hard
second.
time with my microphone.
right.
Sorry.
Any other?
Yeah,
council comments?
just one comment. I think this is one of the important aspects of Eden Prairie, the capital improvement plan. because a lot of people, residents love Eden Prairie because of all the amenities, the parks and rec, and also the management of the road and area. So it's very important and good work.
It's probably where some of our decisions, our meaning councils over the last 40, 50 years, to have a high-quality community that people want to move in here, that keeps home values high. It's probably some of the most visible evidence of that in the fire trucks and the police cars and the roads and the parks, and park pavilions, just keeping a high quality that, again, causes people to want to live here and move here, so.
And these will all come back to us to be voted on.
Yes,
in the
everyone, yeah,
future,
this is
so
a
it's not-
plan. This is
yeah,
not, we're not
it's not a-
voting
yeah.
for expenditures of funds that we don't have yet. So,
All each one come back.
right, everyone. So with that, let's see, we've
Oh.
got a motion and a second. Oh, Councilmember Freiberg.
I just want to make a comment on it. I like the plan. I thought it was very forward-thinking because everything was well explained, and it had a good purpose for same things that you're saying, the visibility. These are the things people see. These are the things that our constituency want, and public safety and such. So a lot of thought went into it.
Thank you. Anything else? Ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Mr. Getchell, I believe one more. This is a bit more perfunctory, I believe.
It is, Mayor, especially since we covered it at the HRA meeting. This is the exact same item from the HRA meeting. It just needs to, at the council level, you need to hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution at the council level. So it's the same exact thing I discussed at the HRA meeting about TIF District 14 for the Edenvale Townhome budget adjustment. Same item, just at the council
Again, to
meeting.
let people know, we have several tax increment financing districts that meet state legislative guidelines. And over time, we've used that as a tool. It was intended to be that way, to enhance development, to allow, it always has a but-for clause. But for this tax increment financing, the development never would have occurred. So we have these districts out there. This motion is simply to amend a current one. So with that, it is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the city council on the resolution to modify TIF District number 14? Seeing none, council, could I entertain a motion? Go ahead and close the public hearing and move the motion.
I'll move to close the public hearing and adopt a resolution modifying the tax increment financing plan for tax increment financing district number 14 within redevelopment project number 5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Council, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, you're fast. All right, serious there. Payment of claims. Any items within our expenditure list of expenditures that you wish to question or ask more, I guess that would be questioning, ask more questions about? All right. If not, could I entertain a motion?
Move to approve the payment of claim as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Freiberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan,
Aye.
Councilmember Toomey,
Aye.
Mayor Case.
Aye. All right. Council, anything else to come before the council this evening? Mr. Getchell, anything else?
Mayor, I don't have anything.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn the city council meeting tonight?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the city council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is